7 chilling possession stories that will haunt your dreams. These are real stories of demonic possessions, each backed by documented accounts and historical records. Sources for these stories are provided in the description below. The Exorcism of Roland Doe. In 1949, a seemingly ordinary 13-year-old boy from Cottage City, Maryland, became the subject of one of the most chilling possession cases in history. Known by the pseudonym Roland Doe to protect his identity, his story would later inspire the iconic novel and film The Exorcist. But beyond Hollywood's dramatization lies a series of real, unsettling events that defy explanation. Roland was a quiet, shy boy, raised in a devout Lutheran household. He had a particularly close bond with his Aunt Harriet, a spiritualist who dabbled in the occult and introduced Roland to the Ouija board. When Aunt Harriet passed away suddenly, Roland's family noticed a dramatic change in him. At first, it seemed like grief, but soon, unexplained disturbances began plaguing their home. The phenomena started subtly, scratching sounds in the walls, objects moving on their own, but they quickly escalated. Furniture toppled over with no apparent cause, religious objects shattered, and even Roland's bed shook violently while he was sleeping. Initially, the family tried to rationalize the events, thinking it might be a prank or even rodents in the walls. But things took a darker turn when Roland began waking up with scratches and welts on his body. The marks were no ordinary scratches. Some seemed to appear spontaneously and formed shapes or words, including chilling messages like hell and evil. Roland began speaking in guttural tones that didn't sound like his voice and displayed an uncharacteristic hatred for religious items, reacting violently whenever a crucifix or holy water was near him. Terrified and desperate, the family sought help from their Lutheran pastor, who came to witness the disturbances for himself. During his visits, he saw furniture move on its own and heard disembodied voices echoing through the house. Convinced that Roland was under the influence of something supernatural, the pastor referred the family to the Catholic Church. After a thorough investigation, the church approved an exorcism, and the case was assigned to Father William Bowden, a Jesuit priest with experience in spiritual warfare. Father Bowden, accompanied by several assistants, began the exorcisms in Roland's home. From the start, the sessions were harrowing. Roland would scream, thrash violently, and hurl obscenities in voices that didn't sound human. His strength seemed superhuman. He broke free of restraints and even threw grown men across the room. The room would become unnaturally cold, and objects, books, chairs, even a crucifix, would fly through the air. As Roland's condition worsened, he was moved to the Alexian Brothers Hospital in St. Louis. The priests continued the exorcisms, and the phenomena intensified. Roland exhibited unnatural contortions, bending his body in ways that should have been impossible. He spoke in Latin, Greek, and Aramaic, languages he had no way of knowing, and growled like an animal. Witnesses reported a foul, sulphurous smell that seemed to permeate the room during the rites. One of the most terrifying moments came when Roland's voice, deeper and more guttural than ever, proclaimed that he was possessed by multiple demons. During one session, words appeared scratched into his skin, including hell and leave him alone. The scratches were described as fresh and raw, as if they had been carved with invisible claws. The exorcism reached its climax after weeks of relentless prayer and ritual. On the final night, Roland let out a blood-curdling scream and collapsed into silence. Witnesses described a deafening bang, as if something had exploded in the room. When Roland opened his eyes, he smiled and said calmly, "He's gone." After the exorcism, Roland's behavior returned to normal. He remembered little of what had happened and went on to live an ordinary life, his identity protected by the church. Those involved in the exorcism, including Father Bowden, were left deeply shaken by what they had witnessed. Skeptics argue that the events could be explained by severe mental illness, epilepsy, or even mass hysteria influenced by religious beliefs. Yet the sheer number of witnesses, including medical professionals and clergy, makes it difficult to dismiss the case entirely. The story of Roland Doe remains one of the most well-documented possession cases in history. Whether seen as a triumph of faith over darkness or as a chilling reminder of the unknown forces that may exist, it has left an indelible mark on those who dare to explore its mysteries. Even today, Roland's story serves as a warning. Some things cannot be explained, and the line between reality and the supernatural is thinner than we might like to believe. The possession of Anna Ecklund. Anna Ecklund's story is one of the most infamous and well-documented cases of possession in modern history. Born in 1882 in Marathon, Wisconsin, Anna was raised in a deeply religious Catholic household. Her seemingly normal childhood took a dark turn when, at the age of 14, she began displaying behaviors that defied explanation, behaviors that would later be attributed to demonic possession. It started subtly. Anna, once a kind and devout girl, began showing aversion to religious objects. She avoided church, refused to pray, and reacted violently to holy water. Her father, Jacob, initially believed her behavior was rebellious teenage angst. But when Anna started speaking in foreign languages she had never learned, cursing in guttural voices, and exhibiting unnatural strength, the family became terrified. The situation worsened when Anna's aunt Mina, who was rumored to be involved in dark occult practices, moved in with the family. Some accounts suggest that Mina cursed Anna, either out of jealousy or malice, inviting a demonic force into her life. Soon after, Anna's condition spiraled out of control. She would contort her body in impossible ways, hurl objects across rooms without touching them, and display violent episodes where she had to be physically restrained. The local priest, Father Theophilus Riesinger, was called to help. He conducted a series of prayers and blessings, but Anna's behavior only intensified in his presence. She would scream obscenities in multiple languages, accuse him of sins he had never committed, and writhe in agony at the sight of his crucifix. Convinced that Anna was possessed, Father Riesinger sought approval from the church to perform an exorcism. The first exorcism, held in 1912, appeared to be successful. After the ritual, Anna's symptoms subsided, and she returned to a somewhat normal life. But the peace was short-lived. Years later, in 1928, Anna's condition returned with a vengeance. Her family once again turned to Father Riesinger, who arranged for her to be taken to a convent in Erling, Iowa, for what would become one of the most grueling exorcisms ever recorded. The sessions began in early August, and from the start, they were harrowing. Witnesses, including nuns and priests, described Anna's behavior as inhuman. She spoke in multiple voices simultaneously, each with distinct tones and accents. She revealed intimate details about the lives of those around her, secrets she had no way of knowing. She hissed and growled like an animal, and her body convulsed violently, often requiring several people to hold her down. Perhaps the most chilling accounts involved the physical manifestations of the possession. Anna reportedly levitated off the bed, her body twisting into unnatural positions that left her unharmed. She would vomit foul substances, nails, shards of glass, and what appeared to be blood, all while taunting the priests. The room was said to fill with an unbearable stench, described as a mix of sulfur and decayed flesh that lingered despite their attempts to cleanse the air. Throughout the ordeal, Anna's behavior became increasingly erratic. She would scream in agony whenever holy water was sprinkled on her and lash out violently at anyone holding a religious object. Father Riesinger and the nuns assisting him were physically and emotionally drained, often fearing for their own safety. The exorcism lasted 23 days, with Father Riesinger performing the rite tirelessly. On the final day, Anna let out a blood-curdling scream and collapsed, falling into what appeared to be a deep sleep. When she awoke hours later, she was calm and coherent, claiming to have no memory of the events. The church declared the exorcism successful, and Anna went on to live a quiet life. She remained deeply religious and never experienced any further episodes. Skeptics have debated Anna's case for decades, attributing her behavior to mental illness, severe trauma, or even mass hysteria fueled by the religious fervor of the time. But the sheer volume of witnesses, including nuns and priests who kept meticulous records, makes it one of the most compelling and chilling possession cases in history. To this day, the Erling exorcism is studied by theologians and paranormal investigators as a prime example of the battle between good and evil. For those who believe, Anna's story is a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk unseen, waiting for the slightest invitation to enter our world. And for those who don't, the evidence remains, a haunting testament to the mysteries of the human mind and the forces that may lie beyond it. The possession of Anneliese Michel. Anneliese Michel's story is one of the most harrowing and controversial cases of possession ever recorded. Born in 1952 in Leibelfing, Bavaria, Germany, Anneliese grew up in a devoutly Catholic family. She was described as a kind, intelligent, and deeply religious young woman. But beneath the surface of her seemingly normal life lay a dark struggle that would culminate in one of the most debated exorcism cases of modern history. Anneliese's ordeal began in 1968, when she was just 16 years old. She started experiencing strange episodes, blackouts, uncontrollable shaking, and a sense of paralysis that left her terrified. Doctors diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition known to cause seizures and hallucinations. She was prescribed medication, and for a time, it seemed to help. But as the years went on, her symptoms grew worse, and something far more disturbing began to emerge. By the early 1970s, Anneliese reported hearing voices that mocked and threatened her. She saw demonic faces wherever she turned and claimed she felt an oppressive, malevolent force watching her. Her aversion to religious objects became extreme. She would scream and lash out at crucifixes, holy water, and even the rosary beads she once cherished. Her parents, devout Catholics, sought medical and psychiatric help, but nothing seemed to alleviate her suffering. She was prescribed a variety of medications, including powerful antipsychotics, yet her condition only worsened. Anneliese herself began to believe she was possessed, and her family turned to the church for help. After initial hesitation, local priests were brought in to observe Anneliese. They witnessed her speaking in guttural voices, exhibiting extraordinary strength, and contorting her body in ways that seemed impossible. She would eat spiders and coal, drink her own urine, and go days without food or water, yet she remained alive and disturbingly coherent during these episodes. In 1975, after much deliberation, the Catholic Church granted permission for an exorcism. 2 priests, Father Ernst Alt and Father Arnold Renz, were assigned to conduct the rite. Over the course of 10 months, Anneliese endured 67 grueling exorcism sessions, each lasting several hours. The sessions were documented in detail, with audio recordings capturing the terrifying events. Anneliese's voice would shift dramatically, speaking in what sounded like multiple distinct personalities. She claimed to be possessed by several demons, including Lucifer, Judas Iscariot, Cain, and even Adolf Hitler. The demons would argue with each other, mocking the priests and cursing in languages Anneliese had never studied. Her physical condition deteriorated rapidly. She lost significant weight, her face became sunken, and her body bore the marks of self-inflicted injuries. She refused to eat or drink, claiming the demons wouldn't allow it. Despite this, her strength during the sessions was described as inhuman. She could throw grown men across the room and break free from restraints with ease. One of the most chilling moments occurred during a session when Anneliese's voice suddenly softened, and she claimed she could see the Virgin Mary, She begged for the torment to end and reportedly asked for her suffering to serve as a sacrifice for others. On July 1st, 1976, Annalisa Michel passed away at the age of 23. The official cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration, as she had been unable to eat or drink for weeks. Her parents and the two priests were later charged with negligent homicide, as critics argued that medical intervention could have saved her life. The trial that followed became a global sensation. The defense argued that Annalisa was truly possessed, presenting the recordings and eyewitness testimonies as evidence. The prosecution, however, painted a picture of a young woman suffering from untreated mental illness exacerbated by religious extremism. Ultimately, the priests and Annalisa's parents were found guilty of manslaughter, but their sentences were suspended. The case left a lasting impact on both the church and the medical community, raising questions about the intersection of faith, mental health, and the supernatural. To this day, Annalisa Michel's story remains a chilling reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the power of belief. Skeptics see her case as a tragic example of untreated mental illness, while believers view it as evidence of a battle between good and evil. For those who have listened to the recordings or read the detailed accounts, one thing is undeniable. Whatever Annalisa endured, it was real to her, and it left a mark on everyone who witnessed her torment. Whether it was possession or psychological torment, her story continues to haunt those who dare to explore it. The Smurl family haunting. The Smurl family's story is one of the most controversial possession cases of the 20th century, combining elements of haunting, demonic oppression, and physical manifestations that left an entire family in fear. The events took place in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, beginning in 1974 and continuing for over a decade, making it one of the longest documented cases of alleged possession in modern history. Jack and Janet Smurl, along with their 4 daughters, moved into a modest duplex in 1973. The house, originally built in the 19th century, was intended to be their forever home. At first, life was normal, but within a year, strange occurrences began to disrupt their peace. It started subtly: unpleasant odors that would appear and disappear without explanation, appliances breaking down repeatedly despite repairs, and unexplained cold spots throughout the house. These annoyances soon escalated into more disturbing events. The family began hearing loud thuds and whispers, often coming from empty rooms. Lights flickered, and furniture would shift positions overnight. By 1977, the disturbances had grown far more sinister. Janet reported seeing shadowy figures moving through the house, and Jack felt an invisible force physically grab and push him. Their daughters were awakened at night by voices calling their names, or by their beds shaking violently. On multiple occasions, Janet claimed she was physically attacked by an unseen force, leaving her with scratches and bruises. The most chilling event occurred when Jack said he saw a large, dark figure standing at the foot of his bed. Describing it as a shadow demon, he claimed it had glowing red eyes and a palpable sense of malice. The figure reportedly vanished into thin air when he tried to confront it. Frightened and desperate, the Smurls sought help from their local church, but they were turned away after priests dismissed the events as a case of overactive imagination. With nowhere else to turn, they contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren, renowned paranormal investigators known for their work on the Amityville horror case. The Warrens conducted a series of investigations at the Smurl home and claimed to find evidence of a demonic presence. Lorraine, a clairvoyant, reported seeing multiple dark entities within the house, including a powerful demon she described as inhuman. Ed claimed to witness physical attacks during their visits, including objects flying across the room and walls shaking violently. The Warrens enlisted the help of a priest to perform a blessing on the house, but the activity only intensified. Black stains appeared on the walls, and foul odors returned stronger than before. Jack claimed that during one blessing, he was physically lifted and thrown across the room by an invisible force. In 1986, the Smurls decided to go public, sharing their story with local news outlets in a desperate plea for help. Their case quickly gained national attention, drawing both believers and skeptics. Paranormal experts flocked to the house, while others accused the family of fabricating the story for attention or financial gain. Despite the controversy, the Smurls insisted their experiences were real. They described feeling trapped in their own home, unable to escape the relentless torment. Janet once told reporters, "You can't imagine what it's like to not feel safe in your own house. It's like living in a nightmare you can't wake up from." The Catholic Church eventually sent priests to perform multiple exorcisms on the house. After the third exorcism in 1989, the activity reportedly subsided, though the Smurls claimed to occasionally feel a lingering presence. They moved out of the house shortly after, hoping to leave the nightmare behind. The case was later chronicled in a book titled The Haunted and adapted into a 1991 television movie of the same name. While skeptics dismissed the events as a hoax, others believed the Smurls were genuine victims of demonic oppression. Today, the Smurl haunting remains one of the most debated possession cases, with its blend of documented phenomena and intense public scrutiny. Whether it was a true battle with the supernatural or a manifestation of psychological and environmental stress, the story continues to captivate and terrify those who hear it. For the Smurl family, the experience left an indelible mark, a reminder that sometimes the things that go bump in the night might be more than just imagination. The Ammons family case. The Ammons family case, often referred to as the House of 200 Demons, is one of the most recent and well-documented cases of alleged possession. Taking place in 2011 in Gary, Indiana, this story involves chilling testimonies from multiple witnesses, including police officers, child services workers, and medical professionals, all of whom claim to have experienced unexplainable phenomena. Latoya Ammons, her mother Rosa Campbell, and Latoya's 3 children moved into a rental home on Carolina Street in November 2011. The house seemed unremarkable at first, but within days of moving in, strange occurrences began. The family reported hearing footsteps in the basement, seeing shadowy figures moving through the rooms, and finding wet boot prints on the floor, despite no one being in the house. Soon, the activity turned violent. Swarms of flies appeared in the home, even in the dead of winter, and Rosa claimed she was physically pushed by an invisible force. Latoya's children began acting strangely. One of her sons would speak in a deep, unrecognizable voice, while her daughter would stare into space for hours, speaking to someone no one else could see. The most terrifying event occurred when Rosa found her 9-year-old grandson unconscious in his room. She claimed to see him being lifted off the bed and thrown against a wall by an unseen force. Panicked, the family sought help from their local church, but blessings and prayers seemed to have little effect. Desperate, Latoya contacted their family physician. During an examination of the children, medical staff reported witnessing one of the boys walking backward up a wall, flipping over his grandmother and landing on his feet. The stunned doctor refused to enter the home again and alerted Child Protective Services, believing the children might be in danger. When CPS visited the home, they too encountered strange phenomena. One worker claimed her electronic equipment malfunctioned inside the house, and another reported feeling an invisible force pressing on her chest. Police officers who later investigated described hearing growling sounds, seeing shadows, and finding a mysterious oily substance dripping from the walls. Father Michael Maginot, a local Catholic priest, was eventually called to the home. After witnessing the disturbances himself, he concluded that the house was infested with demonic entities. Father Maginot performed multiple exorcisms on Latoya and her children, including one conducted in Latin. During these rituals, Latoya convulsed violently and spoke in tongues. The family finally decided to flee the house, moving to a new location to escape the torment. After they left, a subsequent owner reported no disturbances, but the house's dark reputation remained. The case gained national attention, with journalists, paranormal investigators, and skeptics all descending on the home to uncover the truth. The story was later featured in documentaries and inspired numerous articles and discussions about the intersection of faith, mental health, and the supernatural. Skeptics have suggested the events could be attributed to environmental factors, such as carbon monoxide poisoning, or to psychological distress caused by financial hardship. However, the sheer number of witnesses, including law enforcement and medical personnel, adds a level of credibility that is difficult to dismiss. For LaToya Ammons and her family, the nightmare of the Carolina Street house remains a stark reminder of the unknown. Whether a product of the supernatural or a tragic case of collective fear, the events they endured have left a chilling legacy. Even today, the house is often referred to as the portal to hell, a name that reflects the terror experienced by those who dared to cross its threshold. The possession of Elizabeth Knapp. The case of Elizabeth Knapp, a 16-year-old servant from Groton, Massachusetts, in 1671, remains one of the earliest and most chilling accounts of possession in American history. Documented in detail by Reverend Samuel Willard, her story is a terrifying blend of spiritual and psychological torment, witchcraft accusations, and the dark forces that were feared in Puritan New England. Elizabeth was a hard-working and devout girl, employed in the household of Reverend Willard. Her life was seemingly ordinary until late October of 1671, when she began exhibiting strange behaviors. It started with unexplainable fits of laughter and crying that would overtake her without warning. Elizabeth would fall to the ground, writhing and clutching at her throat as if something unseen was choking her. At first, her family and community believed her to be ill, but as the episodes grew more severe, Elizabeth claimed she was being tormented by an invisible force. She spoke of hearing voices urging her to commit blasphemy and acts of violence. These voices, she said, came from the devil himself, who had appeared to her and tempted her with promises of power, wealth, and freedom from her labor. Elizabeth began screaming obscenities and accusations, often naming neighbors and townspeople as conspirators of witchcraft. Her fits escalated into full seizures, during which her body would contort unnaturally, her face twisting into grotesque expressions. Her strength became superhuman, and it often took several men to restrain her. Reverend Willard, a respected clergyman, observed these events firsthand and began documenting them meticulously. He noted that Elizabeth seemed to be under the influence of a malevolent spirit, as she would speak in deep, guttural tones that didn't resemble her own voice. She frequently cried out that Satan was trying to take her soul and begged for God's mercy. One particularly disturbing incident occurred when Elizabeth claimed she could see figures standing around her bed at night, their eyes glowing red. She described them as shadowy beings, whispering her name and laughing cruelly. Despite her terror, Elizabeth would scream at her family not to approach, saying that anyone who came near would be harmed by the spirits. The local community became gripped with fear. Witchcraft hysteria was already beginning to take hold in New England, and Elizabeth's accusations sparked suspicion and paranoia. Many wondered if she had been cursed or bewitched by a neighbor, while others believed she had made a pact with the devil herself. The situation reached its peak in January 1672, when Elizabeth experienced a violent outburst during a church service. She began shouting obscenities, mocking the congregation, and writhing on the ground. Witnesses claimed her voice changed drastically, alternating between a childlike wail and a demonic growl. Despite Reverend Willard's efforts to help her through prayer and fasting, Elizabeth's condition worsened. She confessed to signing the devil's book, a common trope in possession cases of the time, and claimed she had been coerced into making a pact. Her descriptions of the devil were chilling. She said he appeared to her as a shadowy figure with glowing eyes and offered her gifts in exchange for her soul. Eventually, Elizabeth's fits subsided, but she was left weakened and emotionally scarred. Her family and community tried to move on, but the accusations she had made lingered, sowing distrust among the townspeople. Though Elizabeth survived her ordeal, her case remained a cautionary tale of the dangers of spiritual warfare and the devil's temptations. Reverend Willard's meticulous records of Elizabeth's possession provide a rare and detailed glimpse into the fears and beliefs of Puritan New England. Historians have debated whether Elizabeth's symptoms were the result of psychological trauma, social pressures, or an actual possession. Regardless of the cause, Elizabeth Knapp's story endures as a chilling example of how fear and faith can intertwine, creating a harrowing experience for those caught in its grip. For those who lived through it, her possession was a stark reminder of the dark forces they believed were always lurking, waiting for the moment to strike. The Exorcism of Robbie Mannheim. In 1949, a young boy known by the pseudonym Robbie Mannheim became the focus of one of the most widely documented possession cases in the United States. Often referred to as the inspiration for The Exorcist, Robbie's story is both chilling and controversial, with eyewitness accounts from priests, medical professionals, and family members detailing a series of events that defy logical explanation. Robbie, a 14-year-old boy from Cottage City, Maryland, was described as quiet and intelligent, with a close relationship with his Aunt Harriet, who introduced him to the Ouija board. After Aunt Harriet's sudden death, Robbie began to experience strange phenomena. It started with scratching sounds coming from the walls of his room, which his family initially attributed to rodents. But the activity escalated quickly. Furniture moved on its own, objects levitated, and the boy's bed shook violently at night. Robbie's family reported that religious objects in their home would fall or break, and their son's demeanor became increasingly aggressive and erratic. The family sought medical and psychological help, but no one could provide answers. Frustrated and desperate, they turned to their Lutheran pastor, who, after witnessing the events firsthand, recommended they contact the Catholic Church. Father Albert Hughes of St. James Catholic Church in Mount Rainier, Maryland, was the first to attempt an exorcism. During the ritual, Robbie lashed out violently, breaking free from his restraints and slashing the priest with a piece of bedspring. The session was abandoned, and the boy's condition worsened. The family relocated to St. Louis, Missouri, to stay with relatives, hoping a change of environment might help. Instead, the phenomena followed them. It was at this point that the family contacted Jesuit priests from St. Louis University, including Father William Bowden and Father Walter Halloran, to perform a series of exorcisms. The sessions took place at the Alexian Brothers Hospital in St. Louis, and they were nothing short of harrowing. Witnesses reported Robbie speaking in deep, guttural voices, often in Latin, a language he had no way of knowing. He displayed unnatural strength, often requiring multiple people to restrain him, and objects around him would move or fly across the room. The boy's body would contort in ways that seemed physically impossible, and scratches and welts would appear on his skin, sometimes forming words like evil or hell. During one session, Robbie reportedly taunted the priests, mocking their prayers and screaming obscenities in multiple voices. Father Halloran later described one of the most chilling moments. As they prayed over Robbie, the bed he was lying on began to levitate, rising several inches off the floor before crashing back down. The room was filled with an oppressive, suffocating presence that left even the seasoned priests visibly shaken. The final exorcism occurred in April 1949. During the ritual, Robbie convulsed violently and screamed that he was being attacked by a demon named M. After hours of prayer, the boy let out a blood-curdling scream and collapsed into silence. When he awoke, he calmly told the priests, It's gone. In the aftermath, Robbie reportedly remembered little of what had occurred during the exorcisms. His family described him as being completely free of the torment that had plagued him for months. He went on to lead a normal life, with his identity carefully guarded to protect his privacy. The case has been the subject of intense debate for decades. Skeptics argue that Robbie's symptoms could have been the result of severe psychological trauma or a rare medical condition, while others believe the sheer number of witnesses and documented phenomena make it one of the most credible possession cases in history. What makes Robbie's story so compelling is the level of detail recorded by those involved. From the priests who risked their lives in the exorcisms to the medical professionals who witnessed unexplainable events, the case remains a haunting reminder of the unknown forces that may exist in our world. Whether seen as a triumph of faith over darkness or a tragic misunderstanding of mental illness, Robbie Mannheim's possession continues to captivate and terrify those who delve into its mysteries. For those who were there, it was an encounter with something far beyond the ordinary, and it left them forever changed. These 7 chilling stories of possession, based on documented articles and historical accounts, remind us of the mysteries that blur the line between the natural and the supernatural. Whether you believe in possession or see it as a reflection of human fear, the experiences of those involved are as haunting as they are unforgettable. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, some stories may stay with you long after the video ends.